today's story is a mix. And basically, most of my work is a remix. Because I get work contacts that I have on the web I get input from lots and lots of really great people. Some of you are in the room today. So most of my work is actually a remix. And I've written 4 books, and most of them are free. My first one called The Future of Music. So I want to honor that first and just say, if you're my network, thanks a lot for sharing and for helping me. So I want to bring this question up to you. Do you believe that we live in this world where your brain, your creativity is like, here, and it's nicely protected from the outside? You're inventing stuff from zero. You're writing songs, you're writing books, you're blogging, whatever you're doing, it's shielded, right? It's only inside of your head. I don't believe this is true anymore. This may have been true, I don't know, for Jimi Hendrix. Maybe. Or definitely wasn't true for me as a musician. But in the end, I think what happens here is that in a truly connected world, which we're heading into, right, you can't actually say that ownership can remain as exclusive or as linear as it has been in the past. Right? Because basically if I look at myself as a creator, I can look at myself and say, okay, I'm here, I'm the master of the universe, I'm Walt Disney. Okay? But going on from here, we have lots of other wheels who then build their stuff on top of me, like, Danger Mouse and so on. And then we have lots of other people who build their stuff, and then we have lots of other people who build their stuff. And this is how, in reality, everything works. Drug patents, trademarks, copyrights, music. I mean, how many songs can you make with a 1-6-2-5 chord progression or so? That's what, 5,000 songs that use this progression. Who's to say what you do with this? What is an African tribe doing that plays a song? Can you even copyright this song that's been delivered over thousands of years? It may be different in the case of drug patents, of course, right? So you can't put it all into one big pot here, right? And I don't want to do that. But here's what the IFPI is saying, the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry. I've been in the music business for a long time. Mercifully, I've migrated out. So what they're saying is protecting intellectual property is key to growing the digital business. And as you know, they've been extremely successful. The business has shrunk by 68% in 10 years. So they've done a marvelous job using this kind of idea, right? Basically, what's happening now is that this is what's happening around the world. 6% of the world is now on broadband. It's going to be 20% in 2 years. Everybody's in the cloud doing stuff with your content. And in 5 years, it's half of the world. The other 3 billions, the Indian population, the Brazil, people in Brazil, Africa, China, and so on. I mean, this is what's happening. I don't think this will work. I think we have to turn this around. Not forgetting intellectual property, but not saying it's a protection, it's the engagement. The value in the future will not be in protecting intellectual property, but in using it, in finding ways to more efficiently disseminate and use it. So the people who have been doing this, behind our backs, of course, our friends from Google, have actually found some very interesting ways here. And if we're looking at digital media, we can say pretty much that ownership already has a drastically different meaning. Google is giving us lots of things for free that used to cost money. Email, docs, and 500 other things. Phone calls, right out of the browser. Twitter, this is the Google API. Twitter, 75% of the entire traffic is driven by APIs, application platform interfaces. By external parties, there's over 1,000 people who start their business on top of Twitter. In other words, all of the content of Twitter is delivered for free to everyone else. If you want, you can use the entire content to create your own company. The Guardian is doing the same thing here in the UK, and NPR in the US. Look at the traffic numbers of Twitter. I mean, you'd be surprised, of course. That's really what they're doing. Facebook, what do they really own? Do they own us? I think they own our attention, our eyeballs. And Facebook, if you're looking at this, 560 million users, is the biggest broadcaster in the world. What are they broadcasting? Us. Do they own us? Definitely not. What do they own in the end? They own nothing, except for our trust, in some cases, right? Our attention. CEO of Yahoo, I think she's no longer there, maybe not for that reason. She says, I don't know that anyone owns anything anymore. This is already, our digital media companies are already looking in this direction. What is ownership, actually? I think technology is leaping, but our laws are clearly not. And I think there's something wrong with this, right? What this means is inadvertent criminalization of 90% of the population. Or advertent, for that matter, right? I'll get to that later. So the past was this, broadcast culture. Central companies, big broadcasters, MTV, big banks, big airlines. We didn't know what was going on. We couldn't. It's basically a disconnected society to a very large degree. And what's his name? His last name? He has a great cartoonist, has expressed this quite nicely. What a walled garden actually is, right? You make money, everybody else can, not make it. And then we go to, this is basically media 1.0, right? Control, scarcity, money. I'm not saying this badly, it's fine, if you can make that work, Steve Jobs, right? Good. But in general, look at the next step. Today, in the connected world, almost everything we do ends up being a remix of something. Right? As we, of course, know from blogging, or from editing video, or from YouTube, everything becomes a real remix, and then it's all about this, right? It's all about openness. Openness not in the sort of California geek way, or in a sort of, ideological way, but in a business way. Nokia says openness is a business paradigm that we need to succeed. Of course, I think they're going to try to roll that back into success for you. Hasn't quite worked for a while. But this is what's happening here, right? We're going from the copy economy to the access economy. Kids today don't even download music for free anymore. That's already a badge of merit if you get stolen, parentheses, right? It's just a link. It's a stream. It's an access. Right? I mean, if you see what's happening around the world, that's where we're going. We're going to an access economy, not necessarily a copy economy. Sticking with the theme of the day, the brain theme, right? This is going to give us a lot of headaches. Right? Because if you're in the media business, you'd like to sell copies, DVDs or downloads, of course, or on demand. That would be good to get some actual money. But what's happening here is basically, we know that as creators, this is all that matters. If you have a brand, that's basically creator also, or if you're an artist, you know that all that matters in the end is most of us don't monetize ownership. Right? We monetize audience. Attraction. We want to be magnets. Right? And that's very important for brands, of course. It's not so much necessarily about whether we own something, but lots of people paying attention to us. See Facebook. We can still own stuff, but can you really have both? Because clearly, as a middleman in the content business, or whatever IP business you're in, you don't like this idea of access. Right? You're about friction, about scarcity, timing, packaging. You want to make money with a packaging process. And that clearly has worked for a long time. So that's tough. Because we got this paradigm on one hand, the locking paradigm, and we got this paradigm of the open economy. It's a wicked problem, a so-called wicked problem. Right. What choices do we have? I think selling copies, for example, in the case of music or film, or even books, was just a window. A good window to make money with printing stuff, right, with this. Basically, the value here was paper, value is embodiment, scarcity means money. Totally logical, worked great for a while. Everybody made lots of money, except, of course, for the authors. Different question. But basically now, with this is an app called Flipboard. There's no sound on this. This app doesn't own anything. If you haven't tried Flipboard for the iPad, you should. It aggregates all of your feeds and makes a newspaper for you on the fly. It's a very cool app. What can you say about this? Well, its property is a device. You own the device, and the access that you own. The value is the aggregation. The scarcity is attention. What does that tell you about ownership? Do these people own anything? Are they supposed to do this? Are they allowed to do this? Should we sue them, like the New York Times, I think, tried with another reader to get them not to use their feed? That brings me to this, one of the rare pictures I shot myself. It's a bridge in Cologne, Germany, if you don't know where that is. It's over there in Europe. Right? It's all this beautiful stuff that's happening everywhere on the web. It's just locking stuff down at the more locks approach. And this is where we're going right now. I mean, the digital economy is a more locks approach. 3 strikes, a Hadopi in France, right? More locks, because we don't like to keep things unlocked, right? So that, I think, is clearly going to be a threat, because we all are guilty, because there's more and more logs every single day. All you have to do is go online, make a click, you're guilty. Right? Or use a song on your remix of your birthday party and put it on YouTube, you're guilty. It's very simple and easy to be guilty. So, however, now, having said all this, this is a stat by TalkTalk saying that most people don't believe, for example, in the case of music, there's enough legal music at a fair price available, so they're becoming guilty by default because they can't do anything else. This is a big debate, of course, in file sharing. You pay a quid or you get to be illegal. You know, one of those two things. That's pretty much it. Right? So here's Rupert Murdoch saying there's going to be tons of millions of people paying for journalism again. It may well be the saving of the newspaper industry, talking about the iPad. Right? I don't think that will work. Retroactively going back to what the beautiful landscape of scarcity and control. Right? And there's his son. He says, you know, the idea that people want to do, it's all stealing stuff. There should be some level of sanctity, as there's only around property. No punishment, they're just crazy kids. Right? So he wants to punish us for cutting and pasting something from the holy grail of newspapers that they have. I think the balance is off here. I mean, clearly, if we're heading in this direction of locking stuff, while at the same time we're connecting to share more stuff, that seems to create a huge amount of friction. That goes back to 1925, when a record label executive said the public will not buy songs it can hear almost at will by a manipulation of the radio dial. This was the argument against radio. You can't have radio because it's free, right? Because everybody's using it. What happened is Congress in the US licensed radio, became the biggest driver of music sales ever. Right? Did the opposite to the value of music. So now we have this all over Europe, all over the world, the debate about locking people out if they steal stuff, if they use stuff in a way that's not approved. I think attempts at increasing control while we are gaining control by connecting is utterly ridiculous. I mean, think about the dichotomy here, right? We're going to try to get more control while we're actually getting less control. That's just not going to work together. I think basically this is complete spectacular failure, because it's going like this. So, a hyper-connected society that we live in, most of us, right, it's like this. There's a constant back and forth, constant connectivity, constant sharing. That's not going to get less. Why does the government want everyone to go online with a high-speed internet connection if we can't do anything? You know, just buy the approved doses of content. I mean, I think that's not going to work. We are clearly heading into a world where physical stuff gives way to digital stuff. This is a Texas Instrument, now an app. Has become an app. Software company has made an app. This is CDs on a bookshelf. Now it's Simfy or Spotify or whatever. It's becoming non-physical. We're losing the embodiment of this media. Next thing is printing stuff in a 3D printer. I'm sure you heard about this. You can actually print tennis shoes from Nike, fake ones, of course, downloading a plan and printing it in this box. Right? Of course, they're not real Nikes because they're not the same plastic. But you can actually copy stuff, right? Real stuff. And then this already prints stuff like desks. You can print desks. So I think we're heading warp speed into an access and usage right economy. Into an economy where we're going to talk about access and why we can access and who has the rights to access rather than making copies. Of course, making copies is a lot easier in many cases, and it was easy for a while, but I think this is a development that we really can't renegotiate. I mean, this is going to happen regardless of what we think of it, especially in developing countries, and just to remind you, that's more than half of the rest of the world that aren't connected yet. Are they going to go to a copy economy in India or Brazil? No. Won't happen. Right? So this is basically what's happening. We have this idea, yes, we'd like to be this way because it just makes more sense to us, right? But this is just not going to happen. So what we need to do here is basically say the future is in access and usage and in legal provision of that, not in copying. And we're in the middle of this shift process. Not just in copyrights, but of course also in patents. I mean, this is a huge shift of thinking, as we discussed this morning, away from the idea of rational planning So what has happened in the meantime, for example, in the music business, is complete broken trust. I mean, there isn't an industry that's more hated than the music industry, not because of bad music. Right? They've systematically broken trust by saying, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do any of it. Right? And look where that has gone. Basically, WIPO, if you look at the World Intellectual Property Organization, they're saying, you know, the purpose of copyright is this. It is first to exchange and to encourage a dynamic creative culture. Second is the return of value to the creators. And the third is to provide widespread, affordable access of the content to the public. That's the idea of copyright. Right? It's actually a positive idea. Right? It's not the idea that we had before, which is to put locks on everything. We have to go back to this basic idea of what copyright means. So I think for me that means the following. Here's the Statute of Anne, right here down the street, 1709. The first embodiment of content of copyright where the author is protected. I think we should take the next step and move to this, which I would call the statute of Tim Berners-Lee, who invented essentially the internet, and who I got to meet at the Do lectures a few weeks ago. We need a new statute, right? We need a statute that says, okay, it's okay to use under the following terms, right? A usage right, a way that says, it gives a standard why we can do this. To use the content rather than copy it, right? To have access to it in an open platform system. I think it's a tall order, of course, and really what we're talking about here is a topic from a big show in 2008 in Vienna, or in Graz, a new cultural economy, a new creative contract. Right? A new way of saying, okay, I realize, of course, we have to get paid. You know, creators want to get paid, but how? And who's allowed? And who has the exclusive right? I mean, can we maintain this in a connected society? An exclusive right to say yes or no to access of my music on the internet? I'm not sure. I think we must rethink the permissions, the standards. We have to find new balances and monetize usage rather than copies. So I'm proposing to put together a team of people. This is, of course, a fake Facebook group of world leaders. But I am proposing to put together, let's gather some of the smartest and brightest people to create that statute of Tim. Right? I mean, I was going to call it the statute of Gerd, but that wouldn't make any sense, you know. So I'm not a member of this group yet, because it's fake, I can't sign up. But I think the biggest point is the definition of a catastrophe is to have missed the opportunity. We are right here at the opportunity of recreating something that makes sense rather than going backwards and putting locks on something that's already free. This is my final point, and I want to thank you very much. If you want to get more free stuff, you can get my app or peruse me on Twitter. Thank you very much.